Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Elevate Career Discussions. I am very excited today to have with us Niranjana. She is at McKinsey, and she'll give you, her entire, career path as well as her current role at McKinsey. She's been extremely successful there, taking on multiple different, roles at the firm. So, very excited to jump into that. And before we do, just for all the new listeners, welcome to Elevate. I'm Kasha, the founder of Elevate, basically, which is a career success platform and network for students and young professionals interested in business, finance, technology, etc., and related careers. So let's jump into it. Niranjana, welcome. We are
Thank you.
excited to hear from you. Why don't we maybe start with McKinsey, what your career there has been like, what are the types of things you've worked on, and maybe let's start with that.
Yeah. So I've been at the firm for about 6 years now. I joined the firm after graduating from Booth with an MBA in 2013. And I joined the firm in the Chicago office. And right away, I knew I wanted to do a random walk, just explore different topics, different industries, different functions. And a year in, I moved to the Dubai office for a year-long temporary transfer. And I got to work in a completely different region and see how clients, what kind of topics they care about there, and realize that the firm is truly one firm in the way we operate, in the way we approach problems and solve them with the highest impact. So that's been a ton of fun. I came back to Chicago, became a EEM, which is engagement manager, became a senior EM, and then decided that I wanted to explore other paths within the firm because I really enjoy the people, but I just wanted to try my hand at something new. So I did a couple of internal rotations and then ultimately moved into my new role now, which is a solution leader in McKinsey Academy. And McKinsey Academy is our capability building arm for clients.
Yeah, excellent. So awesome. So as you can already tell from that, right? I think uh, accelerated career within McKinsey, as well as getting the opportunity to see the firms in different geographies, different types of clients, etc., and then working those environments, and then as well now with the McKinsey Academy versus the prior role, kind of that very diversity in the role itself. So lots to unpack there. Management consulting is one of the most popular, year in and year out destinations for students out of undergrad, out of grad school, etc. It's a very competitive field, right? So, I mean, we'll kind of talk about that over the course of the discussion on the recruiting side. What are some things that I think, that you look for in terms of candidates who are entering the field? And how can they stand out on their own, in terms of merit, things that they've done, as well as what are the skills that you think takes it to be successful, like you have been at McKinsey over time?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would recommend for people who are going through the very competitive process is just take a look at our website and see the profiles of people who work within consulting and realize that it's truly very diverse. You don't have to have like one standard way of getting into the firm. You don't have to have this one background and it's only people with that background that can get in. You can have an arts degree, you can have a PhD, and you still have a chance at making it in consulting. I think what we're actually looking for is people who can get things done, that can drive impact for our clients. So if you have a history of showing that in other situations through past experiences, you can demonstrate that you can drive impact. You can develop recommendations and see them through. You can influence people, senior stakeholders, and get it done. That's definitely one of the qualities that we're looking for. The other, of course, is problem solving. Consulting is all about tackling complex, challenging problems, which are only getting more in this day and age with all the complexity that you're seeing in industries. And so are you able to unpack problems, break them down in a structured way, and then tackle them? So that's the second piece that I think is an important skill that we're looking for. And then obviously leadership, entrepreneurship, that kind of drive. If you have that, then consulting is the right place for you because you'll hear this make your own McKinsey tagline, which is really true. You have to have that inner fire to want to carve your own path within the firm. Because I say this often, I felt like a kid in a candy store when I joined consulting. There were just so many options, and you have all the flexibility to go after whichever industry, whichever function, whatever topics, whichever region you want to. And so if you don't have that drive, that passion, it's a waste. So just that's I would say that a mix of all those qualities, those are things we're looking for.
Got it. And then as far as like succeeding itself, and maybe this kind of layers into my next question of like how your role has evolved. Obviously, you've, accelerated from, consultant to engagement manager to senior manager, in a short period of time, right? What has helped you be successful? What have you seen other successful people do well while they've been at the firm?
Yeah, I would say when you join the firm, either as a summer or as a full-time hire, the one thing you should do is be coachable, because the strengths-based feedback, you will have a ton of it coming at you from your peers, from your senior colleagues, and you should just be like a sponge and absorb it all and really be thoughtful about, okay, how do I create opportunities for myself to make sure I'm acting on the feedback that I receive? Because that's how you grow in a role, right? You have to be coachable and you have to ask for what you need. So once you've been given feedback, are you working with people to create the opportunities you need? So for instance, if you've been given feedback that you're really quiet in problem solving, can you take the EM aside a few minutes before the problem solving and just say, hey, this is the feedback I want to work on. So here are the areas where I plan to step up. Can I take the lead on this particular area of the problem solving? So are you asking for what you need and creating the opportunities that will help you get there? And then in general, regardless of what your tenure is at the firm, we're looking for people who can drive impact with the problem, with the client, and with the team. And what I mean by that is, with the problem, are you coming in with a perspective? Do you understand the difference between facts and opinions? Are you owning the problem? Do you have a sense of ownership that I need to solve this problem and everybody is going to help me? Like, I'm going to find a way to get this done. With the team, are you a team player? Are you stepping in and helping somebody else when they need a little bit of help and you have some capacity? Are you just leaning on people for support? Or are you being one of, like, contributing to the problem solving, sharing your perspectives openly? And with the client, are you trying to build trust-based relationships, or are you just saying, hey, I need XYZ data, just not telling them why you need it, not coming back and sharing insights with them? But are you truly trying to form like a long-term relationship that they see you as a trusting thought partner for them? So I would say, regardless of your tenure, these are the three fundamental things that you have to drive impact on, and then you get better and better at it as you grow within the firm.
That's I love that answer. I think it's so like well put together. I have three follow-ups on each of those points. On the feedback point, like, is it like, I assume it's a combination from kind of your perspective of formal, but probably 70% of this is informal, right? So do you, as a junior employee, like seek that out from people you work in periodically, or how do you best develop that, or do you set up some time to build that from a relationship perspective? Like, what are some things that you recommend people do, and how do they do it well?
Yeah, so when you join the firm, everybody gets assigned someone called a development group leader, or DGL. And that's going to be your formal evaluator / mentor within the firm. And they'll be there for your biannual review process. They'll talk to all the people you've worked with, and then they'll consolidate the feedback and share it to the committee, and then come back with the committee's recommendations for things you've done great at, that strengths that you should continue to leverage, and then areas you need to work on. But that's the formal mechanism. Within every engagement that you work on, you will sometimes also have structured feedback. Usually your engagement manager will set up feedback with you every 2 weeks or so. And you should, if you're not getting that, you should feel completely free to set that up yourself with the engagement manager, with the partners, even with the clients. Getting feedback from them is totally acceptable. And then when I start an engagement, we have something called a team norms discussion, where we talk about our working preferences, what we need, lifestyle wise, as well as things we need to succeed on the job. And one of the things I always said was, I love feedback. The more the better. Just keep giving it to me, but you don't have to give it to me only in a structured, formal, like, interaction every 2 weeks. If you see me do something that I should change, I'd love that feedback on the spot so that I'm aware of it, I'm processing it, and I can make changes on the fly. So it doesn't have to be a completely formal mechanism to receive the feedback. You can seek it out whenever you want.
Got it. That's super helpful. I think one thing I've noticed is this, the more I'm guilty of this too. I think we don't often put ourselves in position to be given feedback too. And even when we do, we may not always incorporate it in kind of because it's just it's really hard to change some of the things that are fundamental to how you work on. But I do think, you have to figure out, like, is this something that's isolated in this situation, or is it a more broader thing, and how do I systematically do this such that there's your own how you work and there's perception of how you work. So I think you have to kind of pull those things together. And I think what you said is super spot on. I think it's very helpful. I did want to spend a minute on feedback because I think there's not enough emphasis on that, or just kind of perspectives on that. So super helpful. I want to switch a little bit. I'll come back to some of these topics. There's so many topics I want to go over with you. Maybe hit a little bit on the recruiting side. Obviously, a lot of the students going in are looking at these case interviews. We'll start with case interviews, right? Like, you've obviously given, I know, having spoken to you before, you've given like hundreds and hundreds of case interviews to students. What are some effective approaches to approaching this if you're looking at it from a student looking to get into a McKinsey or other great firms like that? How would you advise they prepare for it? And then what are things that are helpful to know, and kind of the pitfalls that you've seen in your experience?
Yeah, I'll actually start with a pitfall, which is that people overemphasize the case and forget that there's a personal interview as well. And so I would say that you have to be prepared for both, right? You have to be prepared to be able to answer questions about a challenging time you faced, or when you led a team, or things like that. And you also have to be prepared for the case. So be ready to handle both sides of the interview. With the case interview, I think the most important aspect is curiosity. Like, are you curious about how businesses work, about how organizations work? And that's something that has to become ingrained within you. If you're standing in line at Subway and you're watching them put together a Subway for you, are you thinking about, hey, is this efficient? Should they be doing it this way? I wonder how many times they have ingredients delivered. How much storage facilities do you think they have at the back of this tiny little retail front? Are you thinking about a business that way? Because if it becomes second nature to you, then any problem that you face in that interview room, it's fine. It's just another problem. You've seen so many of them. You've thought about so many of them. It's just a way your brain works. So I would recommend, if people are preparing for case interviews, I'm sure you have, your consulting clubs telling you how to prepare, what different parts of a case interview are. But the curiosity aspect, that has to come from within. So are you reading news articles? Are you thinking about the businesses? Are you curious about different industries? Industries that are capex heavy versus industries that are not, industries that are affected by technology faster than other industries. Are you constantly keeping that in mind? I think that's my biggest feedback to candidates preparing for interviews.
Got it. That's helpful. Yeah, I think you're right. The behavioral thing is actually really, really spot on. I've seen that in finance careers as well. I think, a lot of times, I would say the weight of it is the case interview. You're like, okay, I just want you to get to an answer that makes sense on your approach. And oftentimes the 50-50 decisions on who you end up hiring are on that fit, behavioral, just kind of, is this person be a good person to work with at the firm, long nights, late nights, whatever it is, on tough, challenging projects. So, and then a few more kind of questions that just that came up, like in my mind, and as students have submitted some of these questions, you kind of think about the first couple roles, like the junior analyst or the junior associate or consultant, etc. It's a challenging role, right? Like, you are interfacing with the largest companies in the world and helping them solve their problems, right? So maybe provide a little bit of insight on the types of tasks or the responsibilities those students and those young consultants are given, and then how they can be the best at that role.
Yeah. So when you are staffed on an engagement, typically when you first join, your professional development manager will be staffing you to these projects. And as you grow within the firm, you have more control over which engagements, which people, which topics you're staffed on. But to start off with, your professional development manager will look at, what the needs are, what your capabilities are, and try to make the best match possible for that. And then when you go into a study, I'm going to give a very consulting answer. It depends. You might be on a study with, as few as 3 people, as many as 40 people. So you will be part of a client service team that's solving a problem. And your engagement could be as short as 3 weeks, as long as 6 months. It just depends on the industry, the function, the topic that you're working on. When you're part of that engagement, you, along with your team, will break down the problem into different work streams. So basically, each person will be responsible for that work stream. They'll be the owner of that work stream, and they will be responsible for that work stream end to end, right? Like driving, figuring out collecting the data, figuring out how to analyze the data, surfacing the insights, fleshing out recommendations with the team support, right? So your work stream will vary by engagement. On some studies, you might be focused more on collecting, analyzing, developing insights based on that analytics, because you're trying to develop that part of your toolkit. You're trying to prove that you know how to do analysis, like Excel heavy models and things like that. On another study, it might be more focused on soft skills, because you're trying to round out your toolkit by the time you finish your first year or so that you're ready to become an EM by the time you finish your second year. So you need to be able to touch on all aspects of the toolkit. And so you're on another study, you might be doing more soft skill focused stuff, where you're interviewing managers on a shop floor and getting their insights, synthesizing it, and sharing it with senior leaders. And it's important to make sure that you are getting those experiences by being staffed on studies that give you those opportunities. It's important that you're working with your engagement manager to say, I see that there's a analytics heavy work stream, and then there's a soft skill heavy work stream. I've done this before. Can I please have a chance at doing that? So having that conversation, and you will, with your PD manager, with your engagement manager, will make sure that you get all the skills you need to be ready for the next role.
And I think part of what you're saying, I think, is also that taking a little bit of control over your experiences in your career also becomes important as you grow through the ranks. I think if you start out right out of undergrad, yeah, you work on a few different projects, but I think even at the end of that, you're assessing maybe, all right, I've been able to work on a strategic assignment or an M&A assignment, but I don't have as much into like a growth market or whatever the other things are that I want to get exposure into. And this is an area that I really, want exposure into. And so I think just maybe taking ownership of your career like you would, kind of not. I think one thing I've seen people run into is like almost waiting for someone to tell them where to go, and you kind of, hey, this is something I enjoy. I want to do more or less, or whatever of. And then one more question, like for especially junior folks, let's say they're analysts or consultants. How much control can they have over, or how over like, hey, I really want to do healthcare, or I want to do technology, I want to do M&A, whatever the case might be. Like, how do you suggest people like either transition or navigate that dynamics of choosing and picking the types of projects you want to be on?
Yeah, I would recommend that they don't see it as just one study, like the next 3 months. They should have a longer horizon. So think about it as a year or 2 years. And within that time frame, they want to get to this point where they are in the healthcare practice doing primarily operations work, or whatever it is that their target is. Because the reality is, you might be at a point where you want to do that, but there is no engagement available. There is no client need in that moment for you to be able to do that. So if you take that longer term view, then you can slowly work your way towards that. And so in that moment, you should be making the decision that's best based on the options that are available, and try to pick options that give you the most optionality, right? So if I work on this study, it's not healthcare operations, but it's got a partner who does a lot of healthcare ops work. So, if I form that relationship with him, maybe the next step I can get from there to where I want to. So thinking through that. The second thing is just networking outside of the engagement itself, right? You have your engagement from Monday to Thursday, but Friday you're back in the office. And Friday is like, yes, you're working, but you're also spending a lot of time networking with people getting to know them, having them get to know you and your passions and your interests. And that's how I actually found my future studies. Like my first study, I was staffed on by my professional development manager. But I found my second study, my third study, and every study after that on my own by networking during the current engagement. I would go and meet people and I would say, hey, I'm super interested in XYZ. Do you have anything coming up? And then they would keep me in mind. And that way I would get staffed onto something that met my interests, things that I was passionate about.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned networking because we get asked about networking all the time, and people kind of isolate that, hey, this is something I do in recruiting to get a job, and then I know I'm done. I think the thing that's important that I've learned over my career and kind of what you're echoing is thinking of it as relationship building. It kind of never ends. In fact, like I think at more senior levels, even in whether it's banking or investing or consulting, it's more of a sales job. So I think it becomes even more about networking. So just on that, what as you go back to campus and recruit folks either at the grad school level or the undergrad level, how much credence do you give to that networking dynamic? How can people be successful in that? But also like how does that networking element fit into the overall piece of this interviews, your resume, your interest in the job, et cetera? So like how would you, what percentage weighting would you give that, I guess?
I would actually say that the on-campus networking is more for the students' benefit than for us. It's for you to have a chance to talk to consultants who are doing this job day to day and get to know, get a feel of it and see if this is something you actually want to do. I don't think it actually weighs in. During the interviews, we're not like, aha, you were that person who talked to XYZ in that on-campus recruiting event, right? That's not how we're thinking about it. It's an opportunity for you to connect with consultants and then hopefully get a broader understanding of the job and see if it's something you want to do.
Fair enough. I think,
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that fair enough. I think it's definitely a two-way street, and I think in here, Niranjana, I think really good insight that use it for your own benefit to understand the differences between what people do at the different, McKinsey. People are like, hey, I want to go work at McKinsey or I want to go work at X, Y, and Z company. It's not like they do one thing. There's 100 things that are done by people at McKinsey. So I think just getting a benefit of what is consulting, et cetera. Super helpful. Just kind of more on your consulting experience. What are things you found the most enjoyable about, what you've done over your time? And then what are some of the things that you found more challenging, I guess, from your perspective?
Yeah, there's so much I found enjoyable. I have to be honest. That's why I'm still here 6 years later, right? Like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. I just get excited about things. I get curious about things. And consulting is the perfect place for that because I'm never bored. There's always something new. There's a new trend that we have to go investigate. There's a new problem that we have to solve for a client. So every engagement was like starting from scratch, going up the learning curve. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, the variety, right? The other aspect that I really enjoyed is the people. And this sounds like a very cliched answer, but to be honest, this is a bunch of really motivated, inspiring colleagues. And every day I'm just excited to go to work with them. So I can't emphasize enough how much that makes a difference to the day-to-day, the quality of my work experience, just being surrounded by such amazing people. I also love that I'm empowered to do what's best for the client. If I think that XYZ is not the right solution and we need to be going down another path, partners will hear me out. If I think that this is the right solution for the client, I can knock on the door of the client and go and have a conversation with them and they will hear me out. So I feel empowered to be able to solve problems the way I can see is best for the client. And that's amazing. I think what I found challenging is, and I've gotten better at it with time, is managing my energy. Because there's so much to do, there's so much you want to achieve. It was like in my initial years, I felt like I had to be 100% all of the time. And that's just not possible. You can't be at that high energy state, every minute of the day. And so I've gotten better at, carving out time, being really thoughtful about how I give myself little boosts of energy during the day. So whether it's walking to the coffee shop or watching a funny video, and oh my God, I watch so many funny videos of dogs and cats, I can't tell you.
I think you should share your list with our listeners.
I should, you might need it during recruiting just to feel better about it. But it's just, anything with dogs and cats, send it to me and I'll be happy. Or, like I've got the Headspace app and I like to do a little short meditation when I have the time. So it's just being very thoughtful about how I manage my energy and the flows of energy throughout the day.
That's really helpful. I think one thing that I've struggled with also in my career is that like we tried, and I think people, whether it's, I think it's more internal, but we feel like it's external, this need to be at 150% every given time, and it's sometimes physically, mentally, emotionally not sustainable to be that way, and you kind of you may end up coming short over time, or it may have other negative side effects, to your point. I think just knowing when to kind of modulate that and really put 100% in when you need to, but I think the other times just make sure things are going fine, but you don't have to be at that. I think that is just a way to, like, just in these careers that where it's like intensive, not just client facing, but intensive problem solving careers. I think you could really kind of solve for the medium term a little bit here. So that's both really, really good points.
Yeah, and it's really funny because when I first started, like my first project ever, I was telling my manager, I was like, my brain hurts. Like I'm not used to thinking so much, like in between classes, you crack a joke, you'd go back, take a quick nap, watch back-to-back episodes of Scrubs and turn off basically. But in consulting, you're like in the team room, you're solving problems. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't know if my brain can handle this. It's just always on. But you get used to it really quickly.
That's good. Right? I think that's constantly being challenged is what I think we all aspire to be. I think everyone in their career aspires to find that combination of consistent challenge and something you really like are passionate about. And I think that's I agree. It's hard to manage. So two questions on that. One is, one is, I guess, on the idea of like you're working on different engagement managers. So the people point, I think I would just challenging you a little bit on that. Like, do you find it challenging to not work with, like, you don't have a boss at any given time or over time, right? You're kind of working on different engagements, you have different partners on these different deals. So like, that's great if you want that diversity in people, but if you are looking for that kind of consistent support or just growth maybe from a group of people, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think as you grow in your career, you form this network of people that you want to work with. So as I was stepping into that engagement manager role, it became more important for me to align with an industry and with a function so that I would get the mentors who do that kind of work on a more regular basis. So I aligned with the advanced industries practice. I had aligned with the strategy and corporate finance practice. And that way I had that consistent, regular touch point with people within that practice who do the same kind of work. And having said that, you can do that even earlier. If you find a group of people, they would want to keep working with you. If it aligns in the sense that there's a client need at that particular time that they're working on, they'd be happy to staff you again. There's no rule that says you have to get sent to work with another team. It's just for your own benefit, for your own growth, that you might benefit from working in different environments with different people. But eventually, if you find your tribe, go for it. You should stick to them if you want to.
That's an optionality. If you find other things that are interesting, but if you like things you work on, continue going. That makes a lot of sense. Few more, I guess, questions. One is like, how do you think about the impact of technology on kind of your day-to-day roles, right? So I think I get asked that question a lot in finance, where a lot of the trading functions are being disrupted, even the fundamental analyses and the way we look at things. And I think certainly, I think one thing I know you'll mention is just the amount of data and how you have to, solve through those types of problems. So maybe talk about what you think has an impact on consulting, both positive and whatever other stuff. And how do you guys at McKinsey think of that as an opportunity, I guess, to going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's just, we're living in a time of unprecedented change, right? With massive advances in data, in computing power, in connectivity. And so it affects not only the kind of topics that we're serving our clients on, but also how we serve them. So what that means is we have made a lot of investments in digital, in analytics, in design, getting people, acquiring companies, acquiring the capabilities we need to be able to embed those kind of capabilities, those kind of toolkits with our clients when they need to figure out how do you use digital to improve the customer experience? How do we use analytics to identify which geographies to enter? So we have to be able to solve those problems. And so the firm is changing in that we're getting acquiring those capabilities, and we're serving clients on those topics. So definitely massive changes. And the role I'm in right now, McKinsey Academy, it's part of that change, right? We have to not just tell clients what to do, but tell them how to do it in a sustainable way. How do we build the capabilities of our clients to be able to, handle this change going forward? So that's
Yeah.
McKinsey Academy, which is where I work now.
Good time on that. I'll get to that in a couple more questions towards the end. But just on that, do you think then the role itself, like of like a junior person, let's say they're an analyst or a consultant, a junior-ish person, let's say analyst, consultant, coming out of school or coming out of grad school, is that going to evolve from like a strictly like analytical role to maybe doing more higher level thinking? Like how do you, because one thing I can certainly foresee in all careers is kind of a lot of the data crunching and that functions being much more automated, right? So is it going to become, I'm just curious, like have you guys thought about how that role is going to change?
Well, how I think about it is, well, first of all, it wasn't always only analytical, right? Like even now, the generalist consulting path, it's analytics is one element of it, but we also have to be able to affect change and have the soft skills to do that. I think what changes now in the role is you have to collaborate with the whole array of profiles that you didn't have to before. So you're no longer in a study where everybody came in the same way, where everybody has a traditional maybe MBA pathway and they're all from the same background. You might be on a study working with a software engineer or a data scientist or a design thinker, or there's a whole array of profiles that you could be working with. And as a result of that, you need to be able to collaborate with people who are coming at the problem differently. They're no longer solving problems the standard way. They might be solving problems in a very different way that you're not used to, but they're still, everyone on the team has the same focus. How do we drive impact to the client? So I think the skill set that matters the most in this day and age is empathy. Are you able to collaborate with people from different backgrounds who have different perspectives, different approaches of solving the problem, but work together effectively to do that?
That's amazing that you say that. I firmly believe when I get asked that question, I also echo similar things like that, where a lot of this in two ways. One is, yes, the analytics, the types of analytics you're going to do is going to change and it's going to require, more technology. But I think at the forefront of that technology is going to require a whole host of soft skills, not just to learn about how to solve these problems, but how to work with all these people of all these different backgrounds. I think spot on. So in essence, I think another thing Niranjana is saying is, if you have a varied array of background, don't be afraid to apply to McKinsey, because they're looking for everyone from engineering backgrounds to science backgrounds to business backgrounds. So I guess that's another
Exactly.
So couple kind of final questions for you, Niranjana. Thank you again for the time. As you think about like the work you're doing at McKinsey Academy, maybe shed a little bit of light what what you want to share there, and what types of problems you're solving, and I think that's just helpful. It's an extremely like innovative thing that McKinsey's doing, and I think everyone would love to hear about that.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, it's our capability building arm. McKinsey Academy is built to is there to help build capabilities for our clients. With the massive advances in data, connectivity, computing power, the way clients work is going to be different in the future. And that's our perspective, that the future of work is going to be dramatically different. And therefore, the old roles, the old ways of working, the old mindsets no longer apply. And you have to be willing to adapt your workforce, build capabilities within your workforce to tackle the challenges of the future. And that's what McKinsey Academy is, where we help build those capabilities in a sustainable way so that clients can make the change happen that they want to see in their organizations.
That's helpful. And last question I have for you, before I ask for any general advice that you have for students listening, is there things that students can do within their undergrad studies or grad studies or outside of work, et cetera, to better prepare themselves for these careers of the future? So is it like expose yourself to more technology type backgrounds, or is it get a sense of what your strengths are, whatever it is that you can think of that I think you think that people should be doing more of on this journey, and then what people can do during their career. So let's say you're 3, 4, 5 years in your career, like how can you continue to develop whatever skill set, or outside of work, or maybe tips on things people can do to continue to keep that skill set fresh as they approach the kind of the job market.
Yeah, I think the first thing is to prioritize learning, right? You can plan all you want, but you're going to end up in a job that, who knows, might be obsolete in a few years, just with the way things are. So if you're not prepared to adapt, if you're not prepared to learn, you're going to really struggle, because the people who will thrive in this environment are people who have a plan, but are willing to adapt when things don't go the way they plan for. So I think that's the biggest mindset shift, that you're just willing to be flexible with how things work out. And I just want to stress, don't feel like you have to have it all figured out right off the bat, right? Just because you're graduating and this feels like an important milestone or marker in your life doesn't mean that you have to have it all figured out right now. I need to know exactly what my career is going to be, what my career path is going to be. You've probably seen that Venn diagram, right? Like the sweet spot for your career is the intersection of your passion and your skills and the market realities, like what people are willing to pay for. And that's true, but you can work towards that. Like you can take a career path that will give you the optionality to eventually work towards that. You don't have to have it right here, right now. Just work towards a career that seems to make sense to you at the moment, and then reevaluate. Do that Venn diagram thing again, like, because your competitive advantage is going to keep changing. So be prepared to be dynamic with that, like looking at it again and again and every few years and thinking about, how should I adjust this? How should I pivot so that I'm responding to the realities of the marketplace?
Yeah, I love that. I think you actually answered my last question. Is going to be what advice you have for folks, and I think your two things on like continually having the attitude to learn, and then number two, being flexible in kind of your own skill set and adapting that to the market. I think are at the end of the day, 10 years from now, I think there's articles that come out every day. 70% of the jobs today are not going to be around in 10 years. So who knows, right? It could be very real, or it could be, we have to continue to keep adapting. So anyway, so I think, that is kind of that is super helpful. I think overall, that is kind of the end of our time as well. So I want to really thank Niranjana for, I think, amazing insights. So many things. I learned a lot from this conversation. I think our listeners and audience will learn a lot, not just about consulting, but just about how to approach careers and how to be successful in them. And yeah, no, congrats again for your own path in McKinsey, and thank you for taking time to kind of
thank you. And yeah. I wish all the listeners every success in their career.
Thank you so much, Niranjana. Thanks again.